In this video, we're going to have a look at how chords are formed. Now, we can think of chords in many ways, and there are lots and lots of different types of chords, but just think of them as a collection of notes which sound harmonious together. So for instance, when I play the notes C, E and G at the same time, I get a lovely C major chord because they sound harmonious together. Now, as I say, there are loads and loads of types of chords, but if you can learn how the main three-part chords are formed, that's all the chords that you get in any particular key, then learning all the kind of fancy ones like suspended, augmented and extended chords are really easy. We just apply some formula to these ones. So what I'm going to show you is how chords are built in a particular key. And we're going to start with the key of C major because it's nice and easy. It has no sharps and no flats. Now, every key in a piece of music, when a composer writes a piece of music, he or she has to decide what key the music is going to be in. And that key of music, just like the major scale, has 7 notes. Those are the palettes from which they can choose to create their melodies and chords. And the way they build chords from this key is really simple. We'll have a look at minor ones later on or in the next lesson. This is how all the chords in a major scale are built, really simply like this. What we do is we take a note, so let's take the first one as C. Okay, we skip one, so we go to E. We skip one again, so we go to G. And if we play them all at the same time, it gives us a C chord or a C major chord. If a chord doesn't have a little M next to it for minor or any other number, we just know it's a major chord. It's an easy way to shorthand it. So when I play the notes C, E and G together, it creates a C chord. Now if we look at our good old C chord down here, let's have a look at the notes that it's built from. If we pick the second string down physically, we have a C. If we pick the third string down physically, we have an E. If we pick the string nearest your nose, we have a G. Now, major chords are built with 3 notes, but we have 4 strings on our ukulele. So all we do is repeat whichever note it's easiest to repeat out of those 3, either C, E or G. We repeat it on the bottom string, because that's the only one we haven't used so far. And the easiest one to repeat out of those is a C. Okay. And we know this is a C, a high C, because this is our A string, and we apply that chromatic scale we learned in the first video. So we have open A sharp, B, C. So those are all the notes that make up your C major chord. Now we can create a formula with that. You'll quite often see chords written as a formula, and a 1, 3, 5 just means quite simply we're playing the first, the third and the 5th note of a scale. Okay, let's have a look. Oh, and this is what these notes look like. When you skip a note, we call it a diatonic chord. Don't worry about that for now, it's just a fancy term. But this is what it looks like when you put these notes on a stave. This is C, E and G. They just look like 3 notes stacked neatly on top of each other, stacked thirds. Let's have a look at another one. Let's have a look at the next chord that we get in the key of C, which will be some form of D chord. So we're going to start from D now. We're going to skip the E so that we land on F. We're going to skip the G so we land on A, and that gives us D, F and A. Now that gives us a D minor chord. Okay, before we look at how and why, let's just check that. Here's our good old D minor that we know and love. From nose to toes, 2, 2, 1, off. Okay, now the top string on this G string, this note is an A. There it is. The next string down this note here is a D. Here's the D. The next note down this one here is an F. Here it is. And then because we've got 4 strings on our uke and only 3 notes, we have to repeat a note, one of those 3 notes, and the easiest one to repeat is an A, because we can just play the bottom string open. So there we have a D minor chord. Now, why is that one a minor chord and this one here is a major chord? It's all to do with the relationship between this note and this note, okay? In C major, let's have a look at the relationship between a C and an E note. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 steps along. Or we can think about that. This is our chromatic scale, all the notes in the whole wide world. If we have a look at that, we have 2 major steps. That means 2 notes, or a whole step, I prefer to say, sorry, not a major, scratch that. A whole step is C and C sharp. Another whole step, another 2 is D and D sharp. Then we have a half step, whole, whole, half. And that interval, a whole and a whole and a half, we call a major third. It's what gives the chord the kind of strong, happy sound that it has. If we have a look at the relationship between D and F, the first 2 in D minor, now the steps along, we have 1, 2, 3, smaller interval, right? And that's a whole and a whole, okay, just 2 whole steps. And we call that a minor third. And that's what gives that chord that minor kind of sad sounding way of playing it. And we write that minor third like this. A 1, a flat 3 and a 5. Now this next bit, if this doesn't help some of you, just completely ignore it. But sometimes it helps people how to understand this flatted third. The reason it's we put a flatted third, we can call it that minor third, is because in the key of D, if I write out the key of D, the third note in D major that you would expect is an F sharp, but actually we've got an F. So that's another reason we call that 1, flat 3, 5. Don't overly worry about that. Just know that this chord, the second chord in any scale, is a minor. Now, I'm just going to keep going through all of them because I think it's a really useful exercise. I know it's very repetitive, but let's build all the other chords that you get in the key of C. So if we start from E now and we skip, we have E, skip 1, G, skip 1, B. E, G, B. Okay, that's a minor. 1, flat 3, 5. And the reason it's a minor chord, again, is because we have a whole, 2 whole steps between the first 2 notes as opposed to 2 wholes and a half. Let me show you that on my keyboard. So here we have E, G, B. Now notice the relationship between these first 2 notes. We've got a whole, okay? See the whole, 2 notes, whole. Now if we go back to C, which was a major chord, C, E, G. Look at those first 2 notes. We've got 2 black notes in between. So we've got a whole, half. And that's the difference between a major third and a minor third. Okay. Then we can keep building. Let's do the next one. Now I'm going to have to extend this scale. Imagine a scale goes on and on forever and ever. So we can keep going. So we have F, we skip 1 A, and we skip 1 C. F, A, C. That creates a major chord because it's 1, 3, 5. So we've got C, D minor, E minor, and F. Let's have a look at the next one. We're going to keep going. Got 3 more to do. G, skip 1, B, skip 1, D, G, B, D. That gives us a G major, because the relationship between this note and this note is a major third. Let's keep going. Oh, I've dropped my board rubber. That's okay, I've got another one. Let's do A. A, C, E. Notice I'm just skipping those notes. A, C, E. That gives us a minor chord. Okay? And that's because the relationship between A and C is a minor third. Okay, it's that simple. Okay. The next one is a little bit weird. Okay, let's have a look. Okay. Now, the next chord, B, D, and F. B, D, and F. This gives us something called a B diminished chord. Why is it called a diminished chord? Purely because the 5th note is flatter than we'd expect it to be. If we go from the first note of any chord to the last note of any chord, for any one of these, let's count how many steps that is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. C to G, 7 steps. Let's try, just to prove that it works for all of them, let's try an A minor. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, sorry, I counted the first one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so it's 7 steps from the first one upwards, which is the same again. Let's go from B. Because from B we have a couple of these half steps, it's not as many. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Only 6 steps between those notes. And that creates what we call a flatted 5th. The 5th is flatted. It's not as far along as we expect it to be. And that gives that chord a very unusual sound. On the ukulele, I'll explain why in a later video. It'll take too much time now. We tend to play diminished 7ths rather than diminished chords, but this is how they sound. Tense, unusual sounding chords. Kind of remind me of that chord in Psycho where he stabs the main character in the shower. It's kind of creepy sounding. Now, if we kind of have a look at these chords that we built, these are all the chords that fit into the key of C. A C chord, a D minor, an E minor, an F, a G, an A minor, and I'm going to play a diminished 7th for this B, and that takes us back to C. Okay, so these are all the chords that fit in the key of C. Now, as a composer, if I was writing a song in the key of C, these chords would be my palette. These ones would be the ones that I would mostly use to build my song up. And later on in another video, we'll explain which of these 7s fit together most nicely. Sometimes some composers will be a bit maverick and they'll steal some chords from other keys, or they'll extend and kind of change these chords. But these are the basic chords that you get. They're called the diatonic chords in any key. Okay, so whichever key you're in the whole wide world, I'm going to get rid of this temporarily. We always end up with this. The first chord is always a major. The second is always a minor. The third is always a minor. The fourth is always a major. The fifth is always a major. The sixth is always a minor. And the 7th is always a diminished chord in any key. Just to prove that, let's try a different key. Let's try F. The F major key goes from F onwards. It has 1 flat in it, which is a B flat. And if I was to build all of these chords just like I did with the C, I won't do all of them, by just playing a note, skipping one and playing the next, I would end up with the following, okay? Exactly the same as above. The first one would be a major, the second one a minor, the third one a minor, the fourth a major, the fifth a major, the sixth a minor, and this one a diminished chord. Those are all the chords that fit together in the key of F. So that's how chords are built. These are 3-part chords. I'm going to do a video in a moment where I will explain how 4-part chords are built, the ones that sound slightly jazzier. But these are the ones that you'll use mostly within your music to play. Okay, thank you very much. Any questions? Remember, I'll be having my Facebook Live sessions every Friday at 5 o'clock. Thank you.